Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Another week has passed, and it is that time again for the Anthony Patch Show right here on Truth Frequency Radio. And of course, we've got our new website name now, tfrlive.com. And of course, we've got so many different ways to listen to the show. If you're out there on iHeartRadio, maybe TalkStream Live, TuneIn Radio app, whatever way you are listening to the show, it means so much to myself and, of course, to Anthony Patch, who's here with me, Kev Baker, tonight. And, of course, you come here every week, week after week. And as I keep on saying, that means so much to us. And it's because Anthony Patch, right now, out of all the kind of radio hosts who are drilling down into the topics of technology, 5G, quantum computers, I think right here, you are getting, as we've kind of dubbed it, the tip of the spear information. This guy's keeping us all ahead of the curve, and that's why every week we see the numbers growing. So without too much wasting of time from me, let's get to the man himself. And of course, you can find his work over at anthonypatch.com. It's been a pleasure working with him, alongside him, even more closely in recent months. And here he is. Anthony, how you doing, man?
Very good. Thank you, my friend. It's always great to be together Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We do 6 hours a week, and I really want to back up what you said about our audience. The only reason we're here is our audience. And I thank you all for your loyalty, your support, your membership in TFR. And really, we see the consistency in the numbers. We have a pretty good handle on the demographics. We understand that we have a very educated audience, very technically up to speed. They're at the tip of the spear as well as you and I are, Kev. And so we're going to add to that. We're going to get very detailed and very technical this evening. We're going to talk again about a very common discussed topic, and that's the Mandela Effect. But as we've been drilling down over the last couple of weeks on this, and I hope people are not getting tired of hearing, oh no, the Mandela Effect again. But I really feel that it is our mission to get down to the real nub of the issue, or if you want to call it a node, pardon the pun. But we're going to get down into the real technical, mathematical, and geometric definition of why this Mandela Effect has been manifesting in our reality. Go ahead.
And you really have done a great job at uncovering the information, the science behind what is commonly dubbed the Mandela Effect. And as we have gone deeper and deeper into this, yes, it does get detailed, but there's nothing simple about what is going on here. And as we're going to get into tonight, it's almost now this Mandela Effect, it's a symptom of some of the other stuff that we've been covering in the past, in specific to do with D-Wave, Tony.
Yeah, that's a great word to use, symptom, because that really is. It's a sign. It's an outward sign of what is going on deep below the surface, and that's where we're going tonight. We're going to go down in the umbrella of just saying, oh, things have changed in our reality, and all the fear mongering, and then we see all the funny things that we've put out regarding people like Jeff Dunham, the ventriloquist, and he making fun of the Mandela Effect, and other people, even scientists, making fun of it. And we discussed the bell curve of the psychological operation, in which they're going to bring it out to Joe Bag of Donuts, as I call it, to the average person on the street who's never even heard of the Mandela Effect, peaking that and peaking it in the awareness for the purpose of generating fear, and then bringing in the solution in the Hegelian dialectic of the whole thing. But that's just the surface, folks. What we're going to tell you and describe for you tonight, again, is the hard math that's involved. I'm not going to go into formulas. I'm just going to explain things. I'll define the terminology. But all of this ties into, yes, CERN, particle physics. It ties into higher mathematics that's associated with that. And, of course, the quantum computing. So it sounds like we're repeating ourselves when we keep saying Mandela, Gordy Rose, D-Wave, CERN. But the idea is that there's so much that you have to dig out, and you have to get down to the root causes, that most people don't even bother doing that. But that's where Kevin and I put in the hours of research to really get down, because we believe that you, as the audience that come to my show and Kev's show, want this kind of information. You want to know what is really going on. You don't want to just have platitudes and theories and conspiracies thrown around and a whole bunch of fear. So that's why we take the time to do the research, and that's why we take the time on the air to get into what the average person out there would just turn it off and say, I don't want to get into math. I mean, give me a break. Just give me the fear. I want to be titillated. I want the, like going to a horror movie. They just want to be scared. Well, we're not here to scare anybody. We're here to educate. Right, Kev?
It really is. And, being a YouTube kind of channel myself, and I see it all the time, it would be easy for me just to post the actual Mandela effects that people are actually experiencing. And I know for a fact, Tony, I'd probably get 10 times the traffic by doing that. But where does that leave people? It offers not even one hint of an explanation as to what may or may not be going on. And that's why it blows me away. I mean, the other night when we came up with that Overhauser effect, I mean, this literally is the science behind what millions of people are experiencing right now. The science behind what's going on. And I think what it is. I thought we'd lost you there, Tony. I thought we had Mandela Effect you into another dimension.
No, the Overhauser effect, just to recap that a little bit, has to do with the spin of quantum particles, and that one particle that is affected and has its spin changed, its angular momentum is the real definitive. When that changes, it can affect adjoining particles and have their spin changed as well. And that causes a ripple effect. So it's not necessarily quantum entanglement. That's a different aspect. That's a different manifestation. What I'm offering to you is that when we get down to the nub of things in terms of quantum particles, and that's the relationship to CERN that it has to quantum computing, is that they're both operating in the quantum arena, and they're both attendant to the spin of quantum particles, because quantum computers modify the spin of those elementary particles. That's the same thing that CERN is involved in terms of exploring the manifestations, the behaviors, all of the different things that they detect in terms of its center of mass, its energy, mass-energy equivalency, its luminosity, all of those things. But one hand works with the other. They're interchangeable. It isn't necessarily just at the surface saying, oh, well, the computers from D-Wave are hooked up to CERN and they're controlling CERN. No, it goes deeper than that. You have to understand that the research done at CERN is applied over to D-Wave for their research and development of their quantum computers, because they're using quantum particles. So they go back and forth. And yes, ultimately, D-Wave's computers will be controlling the opening of the portal at CERN. But that's just an application of it. What we're giving you is the research and development that's going on behind the scenes.
Now, of course, Anthony is taking this from all the latest papers, and I get the benefit of seeing this behind the scenes. And some of the stuff you shared with me today, Tony, I mean, just to give the listeners a taste of the level you're going to here. I mean, we're talking about proper scientific papers that are in PDF form, and they're talking about, and even I can recognize some of the language in there, because this is all stuff that you've gone over in the past, right down to that Monte Carlo mathematics again. And I bring up Monte Carlo because when you bring up this Mandela effect, one of the things that sticks in people's mind is that guy at CERN, old Beardy himself, sitting there quite cheesily with a big sign saying Mandela 1, Monte Carlo 0. So here I am today, and I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing Monte Carlo, and it's all to do with the predictions and modelings and probabilities of things. I mean, this is like I'm trying to express and convey to the audience out there, this is the detail, the level that you're going to.
Yeah, and I hope people appreciate it. And, even more detail is provided in our magazine that Kevin and I put together, which is the Entangled magazine, and that's available at anthonypatch.com. And that's a way to support our research is by subscribing to Entangled. And that's where we have the opportunity to go and lay out on paper the real details of what we, even on the air, can't really get into, because you have to see it. You have to have the graphics in order to understand what we're talking about, especially when we're talking about geometry, as we're going to get into tonight. And we also have a conference that's coming up on September 16th and 17th. It'll be a live stream conference. And we hope that registration will open on Monday. We've had to move to another server and to another live streaming service because the one that we had initially started with doesn't have the capabilities, the professional capabilities that we're really trying to bring to the table for this conference. And we'll talk about it later in the show, but we have a list of outstanding researchers that will be presenting on Saturday, and then myself and author Kathleen Urquhart will be presenting the spiritual side in the application of The Art of War by Sun Tzu, and that will be the majority that will be presented. Be a conference that is going to rattle some cages. And I'll tell you, in the world of Christian religion, it's going to rattle some cages. And in the world of the secret societies, it is most definitely going to rattle their cages, because we have some very specific information that no one's talking about that we're going to release, but I won't talk about it here. Go ahead, Kev.
Well, Tony, the way I look at it, in these times we're living, if you're going to be talking, you might as well go and rattle somebody's cage, because that's the way, or that's the times we're in right now. People need a wake-up call, and it's almost as if we have to hit them about the face with truth bombs to wake them up, because even when I go into Glasgow, into the city centre right now, we've all seen it on videos on YouTube and Facebook as well, but the amount of people who are almost held in a trance by their shiny smartphone in their hand, it really needs some truth bombs to wake them up, Tony, be it the general public or to make these secret societies and security services a little bit uncomfortable that we're going there.
Yeah, and again, it isn't for the purpose of scaring people. What we will be providing at the conference are tangible, realistic steps that they can take to, let's just put it this way, to counter the artificial intelligence movement. So I'm not talking about, guns and pitchforks and torches. I'm talking about individual things people can do. And, I won't give away too much here because, there's always that specter that they're going to shut us down electronically. And so I'm kind of holding my cards close to the vest. What we were getting into, let's get into the specifics here. It's funny, you mentioned, the bearded physicist at CERN holding up the sign Monte Carlo 0 and Bond 1. And, lots of people have broken that down, and we have as well. But focus on the 0 and focus on the 1. That's binary. And that's where we're going, folks. I'm going to give it to you. We got about 10 minutes. I'm going to give you the punchline, as I always do, and we're going to work backwards. Here's the punchline. The Mandela Effect is a cause and effect due to the fact that D wave moved from binary to ternary mathematics. Now that has caused a ripple effect through the matrix.
Now, Anthony, I'm actually going to
easy way to describe it is a ripple effect.
We can't have Anthony Patch sounding all robotic when he's going into this really important part to do with the Mandela Effect. He sounded like one of Elon Musk's robots from his Tesla company there. But folks, as I'm bringing Anthony back, don't forget it's a huge night of radio right here on TFR Live tonight, because right after the Anthony Pat Show, we'll be having Freaky Friday with the Woo Crew. And then if that's not enough for you, straight after that, we've got Beyond the Veil with Chris and Cherie Geo. And then immediately after that, see, it doesn't end there. We have got Brent Thomas with the Paranormal Portal. So it's all happening right here on TFRlive.com tonight. Hopefully, just hopefully in a second, I will be rejoined by the man himself. There he is.
And hello, my friend.
Hopefully, you're not sounding too much like one of Elon Musk's Tesla robots right now.
No, I'm not AI.
But you were just about to explain here this Mandela effect. It's cause and effect, and then you kind of broke up slightly, and I knew this was an important bit to hammer out there. So if you just want to pick it up there again.
Sure. Let me define ternary, because D-Wave has moved their programming, which is combinatorial optimization. And that essentially means that they're looking at all possible options, using all of them together in combination, and they're looking for the optimal solution by taking in all probable solutions at one time. That's a layman's definition. But moving from binary to ternary. Now, we've presented this, Kev and I, a couple of times already, but ternary is described as a ternary computer is a computer that uses ternary logic. Now, that is 3 possible values instead of the more common binary logic, which is 2 possible values in its calculation. So we're moving from 2 to 3. Now, there's a more specific description of ternary, which is balanced ternary. Balanced ternary is -1 or -1, if you will, but -1, 0, and +1. Now that is moving from 0 and 1, which of course is binary. This is called balanced ternary. And I'm going to read this. Ternary computing is commonly implemented in terms of balanced ternary, which uses the 3 digits -1, 0, and +1. The negative value of any balanced ternary digit can be obtained by replacing every positive with a negative and vice versa. So without going into that too deep, the idea here is that they are using 1, 0, and 1. 0 being null, being nothing, or being a balance. Now, what I'm trying to get to here is that they have moved from a 2-dimensional form of geometry, and let's picture using a square, because they use the cube, but in this 2-dimensional, they use the cube in the mystical practices in the secret societies, and then they move it to 3-dimensional in the cube. What they're doing here is moving from 2-dimensional binary to 3-dimensional ternary. And specifically, they're going to what is called tetractys. Now, we brought this up in another show, but that is spelled Tetractys, tetractys. Tetractys is the triangle. It is the 3-digit balanced system. And in the 3-dimensional world, it is the tetrahedron that I have gone on and on about. What this relates directly to is previously they were using the Kabbalah tree, which prescribes, which forms the Kabbalah tree as tetractys. They've been using the 2-dimensional that they put out to the general public. That's the binary Kabbalah application of the tree of knowledge. What they have done in shifting from binary to ternary, to balanced ternary, is gone to the tetrahedron in the arrangement of data and the arrangement of work. And that's where we're headed after the break. We'll talk networks. But now using in their geometry the 3-dimensional tree. And this is something that really has not been brought out in the public before. And that's why I'm going further. D-Wave has caused a ripple effect by moving from binary to ternary, and the after effect is the Mandela effects, the changes that have occurred are because of this shift, the new mathematics, this balanced ternary that has been introduced into the internet. If we want to call it the matrix, fine. But now we are seeing the quantum pollution that I have called it, polluting the internet, which has changed the information on the internet, but it is also applied as a psychological operation, meaning specifically the transmission of electromagnetic waves into everyone's, leading them to believe what they're seeing are actual physical changes in the reality. Are psychological changes. The memories have been implanted, as Dr. Carlstrom described earlier in the week with Kev. These are introduced thoughts and memories through the sentient world simulation by way of D-wave moving from binary to the balanced ternary, altering the internet and altering that psychological operation of implanting thoughts. And we'll get into the geometry after the break. Go ahead, Kev.
And it's, as we've moved on with every progression, the more and more we've learned about this. It was Doc Carlstrom the other night when he was talking about these implanting of false memories. And of course, that led us to this Ovenhauser effect. What a cool name that is. Really cool name. Too cool for physics. But this was the actual process by which they could do it. And now tonight we're learning that this is really just an actual shift, a shift in the kind of reality, if we can call it that. The fact that they've moved from this two-dimensional system, that 2D geometry, and now they've moved, as Anthony said, to this 3D version. It is a change. A change has gone through everything, and describing it as a ripple effect, Anthony, I think that's probably the best way we could convey across what's occurring here.
Yeah, and we have a couple of minutes, so I'm going to give the teaser for where we're going as far as the network that's been affected, the network that is distributing this wave effect that is really the Mandela effect. There's something that is called D spectrum. Now, this is, kind of a play on words relating this to D wave, but D wave actually, there is a D wave and an S wave, and we've covered that on previous shows. And that has to do with the waveforms in particle physics. And that's where D wave primarily got their name from, is from the literal D wave aspect of waveform configurations. But there's also a D that is related to what we're talking about here in terms of networks, and that is called the D spectrum. And that is the distribution of an anchor value. Now, typically the anchor value is pi. So I'm just going to read something for you very quickly. D refers to the destruction process. Okay, I want to emphasize that. We're talking about the destruction of networks, computer networks. D spectrum, or D spectra, refers to the destruction process of erasing network elements from left to right in the permutation of pi. D spectrum is the distribution of the anchor value. Numerically, the D spectrum coincides with the so-called signature introduced in 1985 and was proved there that if a system components fail independently and their lifetimes have identical continuous distribution functions, then the system lifetime distribution is the cumulative distribution function of the order statistics in random samples. Now, I'm going to translate that because that's what I do. What they're saying here is that there is a distribution system that is disrupted. It is by this D spectrum effect. It is the literal dismantling of the geometry. When you look at a geometric shape like a tetrahedron, think of the straight lines as edges and the points that connect, which are the vertexes, being disrupted. The disruption or destruction of those points of connection, and thereby the disruption and disconnection of those edges. That is how mathematically a network is destroyed. So it's not a matter of physical destruction. It's a matter of changing the mathematics, the numbers that are assigned to these points and these edges. But in the geometry that is created of the network, it's the physical removal of those connections. Anyway, we'll get into that after the break.
See. So 3 more segments to go here. We'll get deeper and deeper as the show goes on. But this Mandela effect, like Tony was saying at the top of the show, there may be people out there are absolutely sick to death of it. But since I first came across this has not only intrigued me, but I've lost sleep over this. I really have. Was reality changing? Well, now we're finding out exactly.
You're listening to the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
Welcome back, everyone. We are live right here on the Anthony Patch Show with me, his loyal and trusty co-host, and the man himself, Anthony Patch from anthonypatch.com. Tonight we are getting further and deeper into the Mandela effects. And you know, I don't know if you're experiencing this at home, but everyone's technology is just so out of whack tonight. Must be something with the Skype happening, but you will be pleased to hear that the solar eclipse or the CMEs that are having an effect on us, Tony is back. He's loud and clear, and hopefully, just hopefully, touch wood, he's not sounding like a robot. How you doing, Mr. Patch?
I don't think a robot could be as out there as I am today.
No, definitely. The AI would never have the intelligence of my friend, the Patch. But we're going into the Mandela effects tonight, Tony. You are sounding loud and clear. We're talking about a shift from a binary to a ternary system. You were the man that introduced me to ternary, the ones, zeros, negative ones, and then started coming across them everywhere when it comes to these neural networks. And now we're learning tonight that a symptom of this kind of changeover, this switch that D-Wave made at some point, well, what we're seeing are Mandela effects. And it's great to hear you drilling down even deeper, explaining the science behind the woo.
Yeah, and again, to give some context to this, you know, we talked about Gordy Rose's statement relative to the 2013 video that is highlighted in the August issue of Entangled magazine, where I transcribe that and detail it, in which he stated that they were extracting from parallel dimensions resources, that they were grabbing, was his word, grabbing resources. And we coined the phrase, the quantum pollution being the responsible evidence, if you will, or the effect of the Mandela effect, this polluting of the reality. And we're trying to be more specific here in saying that this is introducing new mathematics, a new mathematical system into the internet. And I say new because it's relatively new in mainstream computing, but it's been around since the early 50s. Ternary is really nothing terribly new, but in the application with D-Wave, it is something that does appear in my research that not just 2013 was it known and applied by D-Wave, but as far back as 2010. And there are videos out there that are dated 2010, 12, and 13 that are interviews of Gordy Rose stating that there is a third number system, a 3-number system. Now, he doesn't specifically come out and say ternary, but he does talk about a 3-numbered system. Therefore, there is a smoking gun out there, and I will have that written up. I'll have the transcript of it in the September issue of Entangled magazine, and I will also present it in the conference that we'll be putting on the 16th and 17th live streaming in September. So the point here is that it's been dribbled out there in little bits and pieces. And if you pay attention like Kevin and I do, you can see this for yourself. So it's not something that I'm making up. This is actually coming from D-Wave's own mouth, so to speak, by way of Gordy Rose. Now, what I've been referring to just briefly when I've been reading some of these definitions is coming from an article entitled Using D-Spectra in Network Monte Carlo, Estimation of System Reliability and Component importance. Now, this is a white paper. This is a peer-reviewed published paper. I wish I could pronounce the two researchers' last names. Maybe you can, Kev, but I sure can't. But anyway, the point is we are reading from their actual papers, and I'm only providing you some excerpts from it because it's pretty deep. But let's take one of the words that they threw out here that you've cited, Kev, and that is Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo just simply is a random sampling process. Basically, it's like rolling dice. And the more you roll the dice, the more that you have a chance of getting the solution that you're after. If you're looking for sevens or you're looking for snake eyes, the more you roll the dice, the greater the probability that you will arrive at seven or snake eyes or a solution. And that's the basic understanding. That's really what they use in particle physics and quantum computing. So I'll read a quick definition. Monte Carlo methods or Monte Carlo experiments are a broad class of computational algorithms that rely on repeated random sampling to obtain numerical results. So that's a specific way, but understand, I'm saying to the audience, understand that we have a lot of people in the sciences that listen to this program. So I try to provide back specific definitions that they are familiar with and that they understand. And we know, Kev, that Gordy Rose and his people listen to this show because we've seen the evidence of it in the video in which he presented yours truly talking about the Mandela Effect when he was speaking to an audience at the Tech Vancouver presentation in June of this year. So I'm talking to those guys, and I want to use their language in doing that. Now, the other that we're going to get into, you're going to hear a word called stochastic simulation. And stochastic simulation is a simulation that traces the evolution of variables that can change randomly with certain probabilities. So this stochastic simulation works hand in hand with the Monte Carlo random sampling process. Now, with that background, and I hope we haven't lost too many people here, with that background in mind, I'm going to read a little bit more from this peer-reviewed paper regarding D spectra and networks, because it's the networks we're focused on. What this paper is describing is how networks are destroyed. That's why they call it D spectra or D spectrum. What we're talking about is the integrity of a network. And I'm going to read this very quickly. In this paper, we deal with terminal connectivity operational criterion. By this criterion, the network state is up if any pair of terminals is connected by the elements in the up state. Otherwise, the state is down. The terminal connectivity has the property of being monotone. Each subset of the down state is a down state, and each subset of the up state is an up state. We define the network reliability as the probability that the network is in an up state. Now, the translation of that means that a network will tend to stay intact and in a state of being up. Now, the reason that they talk about up and down has to do, again, with quantum particles. When we relate this to quantum computing, it is whether the particles are in a state of upspin or downspin. If they're in the upspin, then the network is intact. If it defaults to a down state, then the network has fallen apart. I'm going to further translate and apply that to Mandela Effect. When we see changes in our memories, when we see changes in what we think is our reality and our memories of the history, whether we're looking at a document or a video or hearing something that has been said, that means the network has broken down. The original binary network that we are all accustomed to, the binary network provided by the internet, and therefore the psychological effects of the internet on our reality, because it bleeds over into how our minds operate. The data that is in the internet being transmitted electromagnetically, those data streams of binary information move through our minds. When you change the network to a ternary system, you disrupt that network. You change it from a state of being up to a state of being down. You're changing the spin of the quantum particles that represent that information, that data. You're changing the spin from a normal state of being up and an intact network to a state of being down. The down state of the spin of the quantum particles that carry the information means that the reality has changed. It is in a down state. When the network defaults to down, the network has broken. The network has changed. And again, I'm speaking to the computer scientists out there. It means that the dot connections, the vertexes that join the lines of the tetrahedron, when the dots are broken, when the connections are broken, when the edges are broken, in the geometric arrangement of tetrahedrons that comprise the ternary network, that's when reality changes psychologically for us. Now, Kev, that's a big mouthful. It sounds like a lot of gobbledygook, but I'm trying to give the engineers out there a description of the Monte Carlo, or the Mandela. Go ahead.
That last bit you were kind of explaining there, in the paper you're kind of pulling from, they offer a couple of examples. And if you think of these connections between the nodes as like a pipe that carries water, what we're talking about is usually that carries water, okay, so that's one value, but once it stops carrying water, it breaks down. That's it. That's the kind of thing we're kind of trying to get people to visualize here when it comes to this geometric nodes, isn't it, Anthony?
Yeah, and it's a good analogy, because they're talking about networks that are physically controlling pumps and electrical substations and water flow systems and all of that as a way to try to make it tangible for people. When we talk about a network, it can be that. It can be a system of pipes and valves and pumps and electrical generation systems. And what we're trying, and I think that's helpful for people to look at it that way. I'm trying to demonstrate by reading this gobbledygook, I'm trying to demonstrate to the audience that you and I really look at the hard science that's involved here. And we question hard science an awful lot. But what we're doing is showing the audience their system of how they operate, and how they are actually moving away from this two-dimensional conversation that they have about information. And when I say two-dimensional, I'm saying binary. We are so locked into thinking of computer systems and the internet and information being arranged in a two-dimensional binary geometric configuration, when the reality is, the true reality, the true construct of the universe is three-dimensional tetrahedrons. Now, in a binary system, you have typically just the squares, but they also use three-dimensional squares, the cubes, and they represent that as hypercubes. And there have been lots of discussions about hypercubes and the matrix, and the golden ratios, and getting into fractal discussions all around the hypercube. But what needs to be understood is that the hypercube is a subset of the larger model that I've presented, which is the 600-cell tetrahedron. Hypercubes are a snapshot in time. The time of the replication process of tetrahedrons. When you break down a cube, a hypercube or a standard cube, if you break down any of the geometric shapes, like dodecahedrons, which is a subset of the 600 cell, if you look at the dodecahedron in the ternary system, the ternary system is represented geometrically by dodecahedrons and the hypercubes. If you break those down, you'll see that they are composed of tetrahedrons. So it is not just a cubical arrangement. It is not just a square arrangement, is what I'm getting at. The arrangement I'm talking about is how they arrange information, how they arrange not just the balance ternary of -1, 0, and 1, but also how they arrange 0, 1, and 2. That is another form of the ternary. So what I'm getting at here, and this is very deep, and I appreciate most people are just saying, well, you know, this is just nonsense. I don't want to hear all these details, and I appreciate that. I'm just laying it out for you so that you understand that the internet, the network that they're trying to build, this whole sentient world simulation, is not binary. It is ternary. And because it's ternary, the geometry is tetrahedronally arranged. It is a system of 3. And if you appreciate the movement, if you are a computer scientist, if you're a programmer, if you're a particle physicist, if you appreciate the fact that this is a tetrahedral simulation that is being built for people to be absorbed into, to become part of this new matrix, you will understand that the construct is based upon a 3-number system, a ternary system. When you understand that, then your eyes open up. You begin to see the real construct of the reality that they're trying to push on us and they're trying to get us sucked into. So I'll stop there, Kevin. Let you have a couple of comments.
No, but just listening to you as well, Tony. In our recent discussions, we've also gone into DNA in great depth, and we talk about the double helix and then the triple helix as well. And there's almost echoes of this in what we're talking about tonight, because that's a switch that people can't get their head around either, and it's almost a binary to a ternary switch if you think about it as well, because this third strand of DNA, it's a totally different system, just the same as moving to this ternary computing system. It's a totally different way of thinking about things.
Yeah, that's excellent. I'm glad you brought up the DNA, because it is. It is a movement from a binary double helix of DNA model to a third strand ternary, now comprised of either 0, 1, and 2, if you apply it that way, or a -1, 0, and 1 aspect. So there are different forms of ternary that are applied, and there are different reasons for doing that. Most of it has to come back to how you are taking information, data, and arranging it geometrically into a network. So when I talk about a network, I'm literally talking about tetrahedrons building out into dodecahedrons, and they are comprised of nodes. And so we're talking about third strand of DNA that itself, when it replicates, just like the tetrahedrons that comprise the third strand of DNA, tetrahedrons are in everything, in two-strand DNA and third-strand DNA. But as it replicates, as it grows out throughout the body, it forms more complex geometric shapes as it builds the body. And our body is literally built up of hypercubes, spheres, dodecahedrons, all the way out to 600 cell tetrahedrons. So that is how the body is. Go ahead.
Is that why we see these kind of strangeness where we have the kind of golden ratio going on in our own body, where you look at the joints on your hand and one's 1.6 times the length of the previous one? Is that because of this geometric kind of arrangement?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how the body is built. If you go down to, as we have said many times, down to the proteins and down to the amino acids of DNA, and you actually look at the components, the chemical structure, the elements themselves, and go down below the elements to, the atomic and down to the quantum scale, you will see this three-way construct. You actually get down to quantum particles and how they spontaneously come together. In chemistry, they call it covalence bonding, or the coalescing of materials together. When you take quarks and muons and gluons and things and start bringing them together, they spontaneously arrange in these geometric shapes. They have to have a configuration. Now, take this and apply something like a quantum particle, like a quark, just as an example. You can think of a quark as being a -1, a 0, or a +1. Because in the discussion of the universe, they talk about information. They talk about information being transmitted throughout the cosmos by way of photons and neutrinos. Information you have to define. Information is actually a 1 or a 0, -1, 0, or +1. Information is actually a number that is assigned to a quantum particle. If we talk about a quark, we talk about the spin of the quark. The spin of the quark, if it's up or down, is assigned an integer, a number, either a whole integer or a partial, a fractional integer. And it can be assigned as a -1, a 0, or a +1. When people just blankly say information is being transmitted throughout the universe, throughout the cosmos, and being transmitted at the quantum scale between quantum particles, you have to be definitive. And the information is the spin of that particle. So each of those particles being given a number because of its spin then becomes a position in that geometric shape. It becomes a node or a vertex. And we've talked about nodes in the sentient world simulation, that every person is assigned a node. All of the 7 billion plus people have an individual node. They have been given a node within a geometric construct. If you will, they're part of a tetrahedron that becomes a dodecahedron, that becomes a hypercube, whatever shape you pick, whichever slice of the simulation you look at, whatever snapshot in time of that building out of that network. It all is built geometrically by the nodes, by the people that are in that network. So I know this is complex. And again, I'll lay this out in the magazine. I'll lay this out in the conference so people can see this. But when by their own paper coming out of Purdue University saying that every person is represented as a node, that means you are now the same as a quantum particle with a quantum spin number, and that number you've been given is geometrically arranged in a geometric shape that forms the network that is built on a 3-number system. Take it away.
It's almost as if they're literally building some mankind scale quantum computer where we are literally the quantum bits, Tony. It's honestly, it's honestly the kind of thing that we're having described here. And just think about that, folks. I mean, 7 billion of us, all little quantum bits of our own right within this network. And this network has a name because we keep on referring to the sentient world simulation. It's not me and Tony calling us nodes. That's what they literally call us in there. And they say they want to make it as lifelike so that eventually it's got predictive capabilities. Well, literally, we are these nodes in this almost, and I'm not going to call it conscious, but it's certainly a living network of some kind, Anthony, if we can call it that.
It is a living network. I agree with you. And, excuse me, pardon me, I hate to do that on the air, but
that might sound controversial, but I mean, this is the kind of conversations that they're having right now when it comes to defining consciousness, intelligence. And I mean, I think it's fair to say when you've got that much data coming in real time into something, that in itself has to be some form of almost life. Not as we recognize it, but it's definitely alive, right?
Yeah, and we've got about 2 minutes. We'll come back after the break and get into talking about consciousness a little more. But I think you put it in a very good contextual way by saying that, because they talk about AI in varying levels of AI, and they are moving towards this idea of achieving consciousness in AI. And then from consciousness to imagination, and from imagination to dreaming, and from there, a sentient status. And that's the progression that AI is going to follow. That's the direction they want to take it, because they're trying to model the human brain. And this entire sentient world simulation, I totally agree with you, Kev. They are trying to build a world scale, an earth scale, sentient, living, breathing computer. They literally are trying to create a living computer, because as we have described for months now, even over a year now, talking about the biological warm and wet qubits replacing the metal-based qubits of the quantum computers. When you get to the 10th model of 65,536 qubits, at that point, they shift from the metal qubits, so to speak, over to the biological-based qubits, what we have described as warm and wet. And that's where they achieve, with the 10th model, and there are 14 of them, those biological living, I don't want to say breathing, but essentially biological-based quantum computers that are modeling our biological quantum computers in our heads. So that's where they're at, folks. That's where they're at, and that's where they want to go on the world scale.
The truth frequency.
We are TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back, ladies, gentlemen, strangelets and quarks. You're tuned into the Anthony Patch Show right here on Truth Frequency Radio, TFRlive.com. And don't forget, coming up right after tonight's Anthony Patch Show, it's the Woo Crew. They're back. Yes, me included. Speaking about myself, third person there. We are back. And we'll be having 3 hours of madness right here on TFRlive.com straight after tonight's show. Of course, you can find Anthony's work over at anthonypatch.com. You can find details of the upcoming conference that's going to be happening in September. Keep your eyes peeled for more information on that, and tickets going on sale soon. But tonight we're really getting into some great stuff again on the show. We've been looking at the Mandela Effect, going deeper and deeper down the scientific rabbit hole on this topic than anywhere else. And I don't say that lightly, because you can imagine me, I like the woo, I like to look into this kind of stuff, but I'm really struggling to think of any channel out there, and this is no criticism of them, but nobody is really drilling down into the hard science of what may or may not be going on here. And just during the break, I was saying to Anthony that when you listen to all of this and the documents that came out of Purdue University referring to the sentient world simulation, in which they refer to each and every one of us as a node in the system, and you start thinking about us being the qubits in some massive, giant quantum computing simulation, then, Tony, it's almost as if they're either trying to harness or to recreate what is commonly referred to as a collective consciousness.
Yes, I would agree with that. The collective consciousness fits into the model of the one world religion, the one world government, and the one world dictator or leader. And that's the control that the elite want. That's what the globalists want. They know that if they can control people by controlling their minds, then they don't need to fire any shots. They don't need bullets. They don't need the war machine. This is the direction that the military-industrial complex, both in the United States and in China and certainly in Russia. And Kev, you and I spoke off the air on Wednesday. We talked about the history of, mind control as it relates to what happened post-World War II in Russia in terms of the scientists that were captured from the German side and brought to Russia, and then, of course, the Operation Paperclip with the United States. But, they were really looking at the mind control. And what was the word that you said that we were talking about mind control with Russia, their research?
The mind control with Russia, their research.
They were going to Oh, remote viewing. That's what I'm looking
at. That's the one. Sorry, Tony. I didn't know where you were going there. You see, you finally caught me out. Usually,
that's all right.
Like that.
No, I caught you off guard because I was kind of going off on a tangent there. But the remote viewing is what Russia tended to look at more heavily than I think even the United States did, even though they were involved in it as well. But what I'm getting at here is that the research into the mind has been going on certainly since World War II, but it's been going on with the mystic societies, all through human history. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Tetractus as it relates to Pythagoras and the Pythagorean theorem and Pythagoreanism as a worship, a secret worship. And I'm going to get into that in just a second, but I want to reinforce for you, Kev, that I agree with you that this is a hive mentality. It is a collective mind that they're trying to pull everybody into using technology. And the tip of the iceberg, let's just call it kind of the beta test, is this whole Mandela effect. And that's really just a test of the system. And it may progress on further to where they completely change history, or they may cease it and just make a leap forward beyond the Mandela effect and completely just erase everybody's memories and bring them into a hive mentality and not even be concerned about the written or the documented history anymore. Because if they achieve this, mind washing, this mind control, then it really is irrelevant to the serf class, to the drones that people will become. History is irrelevant to them. And it will really only be known by the globalists and the elite. But I want to give people some hope before we get into this, mystical and secret worship of Pythagoreanism. And that is that God is in control of all of this, and that this all fits into God's plan. Where it's leading to is Judgment Day. And I won't get too deep into that, but God is in control. These are the plans of the mystical societies. And what we're revealing are their plans, their tools, their methodologies. It's not that myself and Kev are practitioners of any of these things. We're simply laying it out so that people understand the system that is being employed against us as free-thinking, free-willed individuals. So, did you have anything to say, Kev, before I get into this deeper aspect of Tetractus?
No, I'm looking forward to this whole Tetractus discussion. I hate that word already, Tony. And, when we get into this whole Pythagorean kind of stuff as well, this is the kind of knowledge that we're talking there, or you were previously talking about kind of washing our minds. We wouldn't remember any of the history. And when you look at the technology, that's a really serious kind of position that we're in, and they could literally do that. And it's this kind of information and stuff that you're about to go into just now that they may not have had the technology to occult it away, but they certainly hid it from the masses. And this is what they've been using all along, Tony.
Yeah, and it is a shift towards using technology, let's say the nuts and bolts, like quantum computers, a shift towards relying upon technology to advance their agenda of mind control, of controlling people. And typically that had been done through rituals and through different forms of worship and chemicals. And then in the 60s, they went to LSD as a probable mind-altering and mind-controlling tool. But they moved away from the chemical to the electronic in the early 60s for mind control. And Dr. Karlstrom does a great job of describing that. And I concur with his research. What we're looking at here is the severe advancement of electronic control of people. So it's not just broadcasting signals, it's not just targeting of individuals, but it really is the full spectrum dominance of the mind and therefore dominance of the body itself by way of the third strand of DNA. When we talk about the granularity of data, when we talk about this spontaneous change from data to mass, when we're moving from information to the solid mass, which is their goal with the sentient world simulation, to create a new physical reality, along with the control of the minds in this collective hive mind scenario that will populate this new physical reality that they are trying to digitally create using ternary. It is a physical arrangement of the data in the form of tetractys. And tetractys, or a tetrad, is a triangular figure consisting of 10 points arranged in 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, and 4 points in a row, which is the geometrical representation of the 4th triangular number. As a mystical symbol, it is very important to the secret worship of Pythagoreanism. There were 4 seasons, and the number was also associated with planetary motions and music. If you look up tetractys, you will see these geometric shapes, and they take on very complex, all the way out to, as we were saying, the hypercube, getting out to the dodecahedron, and ultimately forming the 600-cell tetrahedron that I've described. So we're going to get a little bit more into talking about the actual worship, the spiritual side of this, because you cannot separate the spiritual from the physical. So a prayer of the Pythagoreans shows the importance of the tetractys, sometimes called the mystic tetrad, as the prayer was addressed to it. This is the prayer. Bless us, divine number, thou who generated gods and men. O holy, holy tetractys, thou that containest the root and source of the eternally flowing creation. For the divine number begins with the profound, pure unity until it comes to the holy 4. Then it begets the mother of all, the all-encompassing, all-bounding, the firstborn, the never-swerving, the never-tiring holy 10, the key holder of all. As a portion of the secret religion, the initiates were required to swear a secret oath by the tetractys. They then served as novices for a period of silence lasting 3 years. The Pythagorean oath also mentioned the tetractys, and I'm going to read that oath. By that pure, holy, 4-lettered name on high, nature's eternal fountain and supply, the parent of all souls that living be, by him with faith find oath, I swear to thee. Now, I want to offset that very quickly. I want people to understand that haven't heard me before. I am a Christian. I'm a Christian believer. I am saved by the blood of Jesus Christ. I do not hold to the Pythagorean philosophy. I don't advocate it. I'm simply sharing with you. This is what the enemy uses. This is what the enemy believes in. This is the method of their madness. So I am speaking to those that are in the know to show them that Kev and I are in the know to a superficial level, because we are not practitioners and we are not advocates of this dark occulted system. This is not something to play around with, folks. Don't be caught up, don't be deceived by thinking that this is something wonderful to explore. I have had my severe concerns about even delving into looking at this, much less even reading it to you on the air, because there are spiritual ramifications to saying those words. So I'm offsetting that by saying, by the blood of Jesus Christ, I command the demonic realm, the demons, the spirit, Satan himself, to flee from anyone who is hearing the words that I just read, and that it have no effect upon anyone. And by the name of Jesus Christ, I command them, not by my power, but by the power of Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit, that they have no effect upon the people that have just heard these words. Okay, so now I'm going to move on just a little bit here. The tetractys, also known as the decad, is the equilateral triangle formed by the sequence of the first 10 numbers aligned in 4 rows. It is both a mathematical idea and a metaphysical symbol that embraces within itself in seed-like form the principles of the natural world, the harmony of the cosmos, the ascent to the divine, and the mysteries of the divine realm. So revered was this ancient symbol that it inspired ancient philosophers to swear by the name of the one who brought this gift to humanity. This is what they believe in. They believe in the divine realm. This is not God's divine realm. This is Satan's divine realm. This whole system employing Tetractus, employing the ternary system, this whole sentient world simulation is built out of these mystical and metaphysical practices. This is Satan's system. This is not God's system. What they've done is they have counterfeited God's construct of the quantum world out to the cosmological scale world. God's construct of the tetrahedron is what they are copying and twisting and using for communication with the dead, with the fallen angels, communication with the watchers. When they are communicating with them, they are getting back information. They are grabbing resources from parallel dimensions through the D-Wave quantum computers. This is nothing more than necromancy, utilizing technology in order to gain information. Information I've defined for you as -1, 0, and 1. Also 0, 1, and 2. The Tetractus system is what they use to counterfeit God's construct of the universe, and thereby using that for their gaining of power over people. The power is the technology. The power manifests as the technology that has been built today. So when they talk about getting power from rituals, it manifests as CERN, D-Wave quantum computers, and the modification of DNA, like the third strand of DNA. So it's not just these blanket statements of, oh, they're getting power from, this necromancy. You have to define what is it that they're getting? What are they seeking? What are they looking for? Now, the next step that I'm going to is the Kabbalah symbol, the Kabbalist symbol. There are some who believe that the Tetractus and its mysteries influenced the early Kabbalah. A Hebrew Tetractus has the letters of the Tetragrammaton inscribed on the 10 positions of the Tetractus from right to left. It has been argued that the Kabbalistic tree of life with its 10 spheres of emanation is in some way connected to the Tetractus, but its form is not that of a triangle. I've defined it for you folks. It is not a triangle. It is a tetrahedron. You now have what they are employing, and nobody else is talking about, is the three-dimensional Kabbalistic tree. The Kabbalah tree is not two-dimensional. It is not binary. It is now a system of a ternary, three-dimensional Tetractus system of a 3D Kabbalah tree. The Kabbalah tree is the framework. It is the template that is used to create the sentient world simulation. It is what they use to alter our minds, our memories, when they broadcast signals. Broadcasting signals you have to define. What are they broadcasting? They're broadcasting information. How are they transmitting information? What is the information? They are quantum particles. When you talk about electromagnetic waves, you have to take in wave-particle duality. Wave-particle duality means that you are transmitting both energy waves and particles. The energy waves are made up of quantum particles. The quantum particles have a specific spin. The specific spin of each quantum particle defines the information that is being transmitted. The information being transmitted by way of these spinning particles defines what your memories are, defines the way that you think, defines the way that your quantum computer in your head processes the information. and it rearranges your DNA, and it redefines the information contained in your DNA. It does that by changing the spin of the quantum particles that make up your DNA. This all comes down to the spin of particles, and then the arrangement of those particles in geometric shapes that they are using as a template, the Kabbalah tree, to arrange those quantum particles that are within your mind, within your quantum computer. Think of your mind being changed, being rearranged into the geometric shape of a three-dimensional Kabbalah tree. And I'll stop there, Kev.
Wow, Tony, I think I've just gone quantum because my head is spinning after that. You absolutely laid it out there. And you know, this Kabbalah stuff, we hear about all the Hollywood ones, how they're into this. And it's no surprise to me that this is so key to everything that they're doing right now. And even there, I mean, you're talking about this two-dimensional and three-dimensional. And it's this shift, this ripple effect. That's the way you described it to me in an email today. And I think that's the best way to describe this Mandela thing now. It is like a ripple effect, as our minds, as the geometry in there is literally changed. And we talk about spin a lot, but that is because spin is so key to the quantum state of things. And that's literally what they're doing. They're altering stuff, or stuff has been altered at that quantum level. That quantum spin has been changed. And now we're seeing it manifesting, Tony.
We are. And again, I want to speak to the people that are in the know, that understand this at a deep level. And I'm going to read this. We're talking about the network and its reliability. So when we talk about the network, we're talking about this sentient world simulation that they're building and they're trying to hold together. So its reliability, by the network, we denote an undirected graph with a node set and an edge set of special nodes called terminals. Each element is associated with a probability of being up and a probability of being down. We postulate that the element failures are mutually independent events. In a given network, the state is induced by all its elements, which are in the up state. Now, that's very technical. I understand that for everybody else. What I'm saying here is that they are describing each one of us as a node, and we are connected by an edge. The edge, if you picture a tetrahedron, the node is the connecting point. The edge is the line that connects the points. When you have a network that is assembled as a tetrahedron, and you have the node and the edges all intact, you now have an up state. You have a solid, reliable network that is transmitting information. The greater the integrity of that network translates to the greater the granularity, the density of the data. They're trying to build a dense network, geometrically arranged as tetrahedrons, using the Kabbalah tree structure of connecting nodes. Think of the spheres in the Kabbalah tree as a node. Think of each of the connecting lines in that tree as the edges in the network. If they can maintain the integrity of the tree, then they can achieve spontaneous conversion of the data into the material world. Conversion of data to mass. Now, you're not going to hear that from anybody else. And I'm going to tell you right now, I am not a prophet, but I am a Christian who prays fervently with the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit provides an intact, encrypted system of communication. What I'm sharing with those that are in the know over the air right now, they have not heard the Holy Spirit share with me. Now, people may think that I'm trying to present myself as somebody special or as a prophet or any of that. It's not. I'm simply saying that I gave up all control of my life. I reached that point of completely understanding the anguish of my state as a human being and giving myself up over to Jesus Christ, my Savior, and accepting the Holy Spirit, following the true repentance for my sins. And I'm still a sinner. But I'm sharing with you the process by which we can fight against the AI system that I just spent an hour and a half describing to you. And Kathleen Urquhart and I will get in on Sunday, the 17th of September, of going even deeper into the spiritual aspects of what I'm just hinting at with my short testimony there. But we have quantum entanglement when we pray through the Holy Spirit with Jesus Christ, our intercessor between us and God, the Creator. They cannot read, they cannot break the encryption that I describe as quantum entanglement with Jesus Christ. So I'm sharing with those that are in the know, that are in these secret societies, with D-Wave and Gordy Rose that are listening to me right now, that we have more information about what you're doing than you do about the process that I have between myself and Jesus Christ. I have a system that far exceeds your AI, that far exceeds your quantum computers, and you will never achieve the level of copying exactly the human brain created by God, the consciousness, and the soul. You can never achieve that level with your quantum computers and the rest of your technology, including the DNA modification. So I'm telling you guys, for the sake of your own souls, you need to turn away from this Kabbalistic way of doing things. Go ahead, Kev.
No, and I mean, for anyone out there listening, you don't have to be Christian. I've done so many shows on so many topics, and like I said the other night, you can go from this quantum computing and the other dimensions all the way out to exorcisms and possessions, yet it always comes back to that Jesus Christ. That's the one thing that can almost break this spell. And I've had non-Christians on the show talking about this as well, so there is a spiritual aspect to everything that we talk about. And the elites, this is exactly the kind of spiritual realms that they're dipping into, that we're exposing right here tonight on the Anthony Pat Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in 3 short minutes.
You must unite what has been set asunder.
We are TFR.
Truth Frequency
Alrighty, well,
Radio.
welcome back. Kev is grabbing himself a cup of coffee, or maybe it's a scotch since he's in Scotland.
I'm
But,
back. I'm back.
Oh, don't!
Yeah.
I don't want you back. I don't want you back.
Never fear.
You talk too much.
The whiskey drinking Scotsman, he's here. No, Tony, you know, man. You're just trying to whet my appetite. You know I can't touch that amber nectar of the gods, the whiskey, since I've had this health problem. That's cruel of you, man.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of health, I again want to thank everybody who's been so generous in helping Kev out through the GoFundMe campaign, and it is still live, and we appreciate the continuing support that everybody has provided in that respect. And GoFundMe has done very, very well, and I really, it's so gratifying to know that there are still lots of people in this world that have a big heart. And I just want to thank everybody for doing that. And, lots of people have subscribed to our magazine, Entangled magazine, as well. And, we're just trying to do it to get the information out there and cover our costs. That's all we're doing. Same thing with this upcoming conference. It's $10 a day. It's just covering our costs. That's all we're doing. So anyway, Kev is alive and well, and his heart is still kicking around and ticking over like an old Model T flathead Ford. And
sounds like the D-Wave. It sounds like the D-Wave when Gordy Rosewood stood next to it.
Sure. It's the heartbeat of an alien god. No, the altar to an alien god, he said. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly it.
I think we're shifting into a little bit lighter side of the show here, Kevin. In just a moment, I would like you to cue up, if you would, that video of the commercial, the Android commercial, and the Oreo cookies. It's very interesting that they brought the two together. I don't know how much of the commercial you're going to play or the video, actually. It was a composite, but I'm just going to kind of set it up. Oreo cookies, if people will look at those, and I have nothing against the company that makes them. I think it's Nabisco. But Oreo cookies, if you look at their symbol, if you look at what's imprinted on the chocolate of the chocolate cookie, that's a satanic symbol. I'm sorry to say and to reveal to you. I'm not the first one to say that, but that is, if you look at the occult, if you look at the secret societies like the Golden Age of Crowley, the Golden Age Society of Crowley, that symbol is a symbol of Satan. It's a double cross. And it's unfortunate that they chose that. But, you know, lots of corporate symbols have very mystical roots in their origins for not only the symbols, but the people that run those companies. And you do not get up into the higher echelons of society, into the elite strata, unless you're part of those elite, the Illuminati, wherever you want to talk about. So they combined that into a commercial for the Android phone. And Kev can probably describe it better, but I just wanted to highlight that aspect to it. But it is pointing towards September 23rd. It is pointing towards the return in the heavens in the constellation Virgo. According to Revelation 12, it is the birthing of the Antichrist spirit in the form of the red dragon, and his tail gathering a third of the angels, the fallen angels from heaven, gathering the angels, described in Revelation 12 as casting a third of the stars to the earth. And this is time for September 23rd. This is the birthing of the Antichrist spirit. Does it mean that we're going to immediately see something on the 23rd? No. But again, the dark side, the enemy, the mystical societies, including the Vatican and the popes themselves, the black pope and the white pope, what they are going to do behind the scenes, we're not privy to. But definitely this holds significance for them and the birthing of their Antichrist here on this planet. That does not mean a child is going to be born. It means that the spirit will indwell an adult male on this planet. Now, how that plays out, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm sure that the Holy Spirit will share more with me and many other people like myself that are praying for the information to be given to us through the Holy Spirit as to what we can expect to begin manifesting in this world after the 23rd. I said it once in public on the Kev Baker Show. I'll say it again tonight. And I will elaborate on this on the 17th of September in the conference, that I believe the September 23rd of this year marks the beginning of the 7-year tribulation. Does that mean that war is going to break out on the 23rd or other physical manifestations? Not necessarily. But I do believe that that is the starting of the 7 years. So we will see how that plays out. I am not a prophet. It is only my sense of how things are going on in the world now and the way things that are playing out. And the more that I look into this Kabbalistic practice that were described here tonight of the ternary, and we talk about the tetractys, we talk about the geometry that's making up this new reality that they're trying to create, it sure looks like September is the beginning of the tribulation. We look at 5G and its rollout and the pressure from the 5G manufacturers with Donald Trump to issue essentially an executive order to cut through the red tape at the city and county levels to just allow them to begin to distribute their antennas without any environmental impact studies being done, without the normal process of community involvement and community comment to their local city that they're just cutting through all of the red tape and they're steamrolling 5G. When you hear people in the industry say, 2020 will have the commercial rollout of 5G by 2020. No, they want to roll it out now. They know what's coming in September, and they're applauding it. And they want to be ready in time for their master, the Antichrist spirit, to arrive in September. So they're scrambling to meet the demands of the evil one who's pushing all of this technology on mankind. And they want to enslave mankind. And the technology is in place. There's enough 5G already to already be manifesting simple things like this Mandela Effect throughout the world. There's enough immersion in the 5G to achieve that beta test of the Mandela Effect. And somebody in chat said that they thought that it was tapering off. And I agree. The Mandela Effect is tapering off. And that the manifestation of it, because they've already completed their beta test. They know what's coming. And they know that they have to distribute 5G antennas as rapidly as they possibly can. Now, where it's distributed right now, not just the cell towers on the ground, but the geosynchronous satellites that are in diamond constellation configurations. They call them constellations. When you look at the data transmission, the signal, when you look at the actual 5G data, it is represented in a geometric shape called a constellation. That is both in a square, cube, three-dimensionally, but also in a spherical constellation pattern. The denser the signal, the denser that geometric shape, the denser that constellation of data in the transmission of 5G signals, the greater granularity they can achieve in this sentient world simulation. 5G is for the purpose of creating the densest, most compact transmission of data that they can into this environment. That's why they call it the Internet of Everything, or the Internet of All Things, as my friend Sid talks about, the engineer. So what we're talking about here is not just full immersion by way of satellites and cell towers, but literally down to the microscopic scale, antennas being deployed everywhere. I'll give you an example. We have special operations troops in Afghanistan that for the last 2 years have been literally sprinkling antennas all over the battlefield. These are sensors that send and receive information. That is all 5G technology. I'm not giving away a secret that's going to compromise anybody. None of our troops are at risk by my saying that. I'm telling you that that is exactly in the civilian world what they are doing now is laying out microscopic antennas that send and receive. They call them sensors, nanosensors even down to the nanoscale, that are distributed everywhere. This comes right out of the peer-reviewed papers. None of this is classified information. Anybody can find it. So that's where we're at. And we're quickly approaching September 23rd. So I'm trying to compel people into not only understanding the mechanisms of the technology, not only understanding the operations of the mystical societies, employing Pythagorean, which spawned into Sumerian, Babylonian technology, into Greek and then Roman technologies, and all the way on up into the Middle Ages, in which we get into Dee and Kelly and up into the modern times with Crowley. All of this stuff works in lockstep through all of the annals of history to where we are today. And now they have the D-Wave computers, they have the CERN, they have the modification of DNA. They have that triangle, that tetrahedron, if you will, of technology in place now. Those three are the most specific existential threats to us. DNA, CERN, quantum computers. When you talk quantum computers, you're talking AI. So we were going to get a little lighthearted, Kev. I'm sorry. I went off on that tangent. But if you want to bring in that Oreo commercial, some sound clips from that, we can kind of take that apart.
You're on fire tonight, man. I love it when you go off on one like this because you string everything together and you really hammer home the point well. And just listening to you there, I mean, this Antichrist spirit, this is something I've covered a lot, even before I had the show when I was over on YouTube. Who is or what is this Antichrist? And, you know, I used to think Prince William would be a pretty good candidate to be a husk for that kind of spirit. But there's one person right now that's offering himself up as the perfect kind of candidate, the ideal golem to let that Antichrist spirit inhabit. And it's got to be that creepy little French president, Emmanuel Macron. He himself has declared himself the god of the Roman god Jupiter and stuff like that. And if anyone has been put forward as somebody that's going to be at the heart of one of these sneaky secret rituals, that's the guy I'd be watching, let me tell you. But Anthony, you're right. You sent me a video during the week, and like you were saying there, Oreos, I'd never ever really examined the biscuit, never had time to. Usually I'm stuffing my face with them. But this video that you sent me, this is really, really interesting. We've got time to play the video here. It's only 3.5 minutes long, and then we'll get into it on the other side. So let's take a listen to this.
They're the stars, you guys, and it's like, what the heck is going on here? Somebody asked me to look at the Android Oreo. This is the latest software update for the Android. They released this on the eclipse, August 21st, coinciding with the solar eclipse. And this thing is all about, this is unbelievable. It's about the pair of eclipses. Once again, the one that happened yesterday and the one in 7 years. Watch this quick video here. This is unbelievable. I'm just going to play pieces of it. They show the eclipse. They show all these droids. Now, this is all about the hybridization, right? Here comes this thing. And here you see the double cross on the Oreo cookie. Now, this isn't me making this up. This is the Cross of Lorraine. Marilyn Manson has it featured here on his website for Celebritarian Corporation, which is like an art website or something like that. He says that it's not exactly the Cross of Lorraine, but what we do know about this is that this doubles as the satanic cross right here. This is on the website for Cross of Lorraine, which is the same one that's on the Oreo cookie. You can't make this up. Well, then we saw on Twitter, The Strain, also this TV series was fascinated with the pair of eclipses. One brought in the plague. One apparently got rid of the plague. 7 years apart. They actually named the date in the series The Strain. And on the eclipse, they tweet out, "The Master is here." Okay, so on this date, the Android launches, Android 8, and watch this. You saw the first eclipse. Now watch what happens. They energize this thing with the people, right? The masses of the people. Here's your spiral Saturn. The Oreo has arrived. And then look what comes in the sky. It's the black hole sun from Soundgarden, of which Chris Cornell died this year, the year of this eclipse. I mean, if you think all of this is by accident, you're just sadly mistaken. I don't know how to help people understand this, but this is where everything is headed. They're basically hiding in plain sight. And of course, the first eclipse, Oreo cookie, fights and destroys the new threat, right? And this is problem, reaction, solution, right? Almost drops the milk. This is the milk of human sacrifice. We've talked all about that. Milk really means Molech, the land of Molech and money. Instead of the land of milk and honey, it's the land of Molech and money. All right. So now everyone's doing selfies and, this whole thing.
Oh, Tony, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, the video, just the audio's totally cut out on this video here. Oh, there we go. It's back again.
And that's where everything sits, you guys. The Android Oreo update, launching on the Eclipse, bringing in whatever it is that they're going to bring in, that they've brought in, according to the strain, the master is here.
Now, let's pause it there. The master is here. I mean, you couldn't get any more unambiguous than that. And this, of course, has the eclipse in the background. And when it comes to either advertisements for audios or TV shows, Anthony, they really do. It's predictive programming, and they tend to hide things in plain sight. Now, some people rubbish this, but when you start looking at some of the analysis on some of these adverts and some of these TV shows, then it goes beyond the realms of coincidence that the writers or the producers just happen to stumble across these things.
Yeah, and at the beginning of the video, Enter the Stars is the name of this video on YouTube. The channel is Enter the Stars. I wanted to give him credit because they got cut off at the beginning. But fabulous work he does. I follow Enter the Stars. He's very good at putting the dots together, and I commend him for this one. And yes, this is the Cross of Lorraine. And if you look at Aleister Crowley's Golden Age Society, that's one of the symbols that they use, one of the sigils that they use in their practices. So, yeah, the timing of all of this it's like, we've talked about so many times where they have to tell their victims ahead of time what they're going to do. So they're telling us as the victims that they are about to bring in the spirit of the Antichrist, that the August 21st eclipse was a warning of what is coming in September, and they're promoting it. Now, the other warning was when Gordy Rose was talking to Tech Vancouver in his black T-shirt for his company, included the symbol of the Ouroboros, which is the snake eating its tail. And that is exactly what you see in the heavens during the full eclipse, is the Ouroboros, which is the sun, the ring of the sun that is shining around the moon itself during the eclipse. That is the Ouroboros. There's nothing new under the sun. In Scripture, if you go to the book of Ecclesiastes, it says there's nothing new under the sun. That's why all of this is happening at the same time, because there is nothing new under the sun. It's being heralded by the eclipse on the 21st that we just had. And Gordy Rose is promoting the fact that these are the days by his own company T-shirt using the Ouroboros as their company logo. They all worship Lucifer. That's the bottom line.
And of course, Gordy Rose, he'll be listening to us right now. He'll be getting ready for Freaky Friday as we speak, Anthony. And he probably chose on purpose to use that T-shirt that day because he knew that people like you or I would bring this up, right? I'm only joking.
And the company's name is what? Kindred? As in kindred spirits? And that, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, the minute it's like a word association, right? The minute you hear the word kindred, minds automatically want to finish that sentence and say spirits.
Yes, because that's right out of the Bible, and it's right out of their own mystical practices. Kindred spirits, because they are communicating with kindred spirits. They're communicating with the dead. So you think of all the different forms of geomancy and necromancy and watermancy and spatulamancy and all these different forms of mancy, which is all communicating with the dead. That's all that the D-Wave computer is. It is just an elaborate form of communication, like a telephone to the dead. Go ahead, my friend.
It is like the most super advanced form of tarot cards you'll ever find, right?
It is, definitely. And, geomancy, writing in the sand, if you look that up, you'll see that there are what look like our playing cards. If you think of our playing cards with the diamonds on them, okay, you see those diamonds arranged on the playing cards in different configurations. That is the configuration of utilizing those writings in the soil, in the dirt, in the sand, the geomancy, which means earth or soil. They're actually writing out different configurations of those diamonds or those dots because those mean something to the spiritual world. Those are the ways that they get information. They get it by the arrangement of geometric patterns. And those geometric patterns represent data. They're literally 0, -1, +1 in the ternary, or another form of balanced ternary is the 0, 1, and 2. So they're literally getting information from the other side when they practice this geometric form of geomancy in the soil, take that out to the arrangement of their qubits in the quantum computers. They are arranged utilizing the whole practice of geomancy. The literal layout on the chipset of the qubits is done according to these mystical practices of communicating with the dead.
So, Anthony, this artificial kind of construct that we're moving towards, that they're literally building, I mean, they talked about the divine realm in that Kabbalistic thing you were reading out earlier on, and you were rightly saying it, this is nothing divine, it's the spiritual, it's the dark kind of realm. It's almost as if this new construct that they're creating, this new quasi-physical spiritual realm, it's not just for us to move into, it's somewhere that they can inhabit as well, right?
Oh, yeah. See, you are always so good at summing these things up. You're exactly right. It is for them to inhabit, not for us. They want to eliminate God's construct. They want to eliminate everything that God created and counterfeit it according to how Lucifer wants it. Well, they're all in for a rude awakening because it means the death of their soul. We got about a minute and a half, Kev. Go ahead.
This has been amazing stuff again, Anthony. It really has. It's been a pleasure. And of course, we'll be continuing the conversation on the Kev Baker Show for 2 hours on Monday, same time, same place. And don't go anywhere after this show because things will get a little crazy after the break when I change my hat and I become one of the Woo Crew and I join forces with Scotty Lopez, Johnny Whistles, who seems to be flying the Freaky Friday ship right now. Brilliant stuff. And of course, there's dirty, nasty rumours that Joe Joseph is even going to be joining the Woo Crew tonight. So please stay tuned for that. Chris and Cherie Geo, they'll also be coming up tonight on this Info Fest right here on TFRlive.com. And if you're still going after that and you still need more effect, I mean, this literally is the science behind what millions of people are experiencing right now. The science behind what's going on. And I think what it is. I thought we'd lost you there, Tony. I thought we had Mandela Effect you into another dimension.
No, the Ovenhauser effect, just to recap that a little bit, has to do with the spin of quantum particles, and that one particle that is affected and has its spin changed, its angular momentum is the real definitive. When that changes, it can affect adjoining particles and have their spin changed as well. And that causes a ripple effect. So it's not necessarily quantum entanglement. That's a different aspect. That's a different manifestation. What I'm offering to you is that when we get down to the nub of things in terms of quantum particles, and that's the relationship to CERN that it has to quantum computing, is that they're both operating in the quantum arena, and they're both attendant to the spin of quantum particles, because quantum computers modify the spin of those elementary particles. That's the same thing that CERN is involved in terms of exploring the manifestations, the behaviors, all of the different things that they detect in terms of its center of mass, its energy, mass-energy equivalency, its luminosity, all of those things. But one hand works with the other. They're interchangeable. It isn't necessarily just at the surface saying, oh, well, the computers from D-Wave are hooked up to CERN and they're controlling CERN. No, it goes deeper than that. You have to understand that the research done at CERN is applied over to D-Wave for their research and development of their quantum computers because they're using quantum particles. So they go back and forth. And yes, ultimately, D-Wave's computers will be controlling the opening of the portal at CERN. But that's just an application of it. What we're giving you is the research and development that's going on behind the scenes.
Now, of course, Anthony is taking this from all the latest papers, and I get the benefit of seeing this behind the scenes. And some of the stuff you shared with me today, Tony, just to give the listeners a taste of the level you're going to here. We're talking about proper scientific papers that are in PDF form, and they're talking about, and even I can recognize some of the language in there, because this is all stuff that you've gone over in the past, right down to that Monte Carlo mathematics again. And I bring up Monte Carlo because when you bring up this Mandela effect, one of the things that sticks in people's mind is that guy at CERN, old Beardy himself, sitting there quite cheesily with a big sign saying Mandela 1, Monte Carlo 0. So here I am today, and I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing Monte Carlo of some of the other stuff that we've been covering in the past, in specific to do with D-Wave, Tony.
Yeah, that's a great word to use, symptom, because that really is. It's a sign. It's an outward sign of what is going on deep below the surface. And that's where we're going tonight. We're going to go down in the umbrella of just saying, things have changed in, our reality and, all the fear mongering. And then we see all the funny things that we've put out regarding people like Jeff Dunham, the ventriloquist, and he making fun of the Mandela effect, and other people, even scientists making fun of it. And we discussed the bell curve of the psychological operation in which they're going to bring it out to Joe Bag of Donuts, as I call it, to the average person on the street who's never even heard of the Mandela effect, peaking it in the awareness for the purpose of generating fear, and then bringing in the solution in the Hegelian dialectic of the whole thing. But that's just the surface, folks. What we're going to tell you and describe for you tonight, again, is the hard math that's involved. I'm not going to go into formulas. I'm just going to explain things. I'll define the terminology. But all of this ties into, yes, CERN, particle physics. It ties into higher mathematics that's associated with that. And, of course, the quantum computing. So it sounds like we're repeating ourselves when we keep saying Mandela, Gordy Rose, D-Wave, CERN. But the idea is that there's so much that you have to dig out, and you have to get down to the root causes that most people don't even bother doing that. But that's where Kev and I put in the hours of research to really get down, because we believe that you, as the audience that come to my show and Kev's show, want this kind of information. You want to know what is really going on. You don't want to just have platitudes and theories and conspiracies thrown around and a whole bunch of fear. So that's why we take the time to do the research, and that's why we take the time on the air to get into what the average person out there would just turn it off and say, I don't want to get into math. Give me a break. Just give me the fear. I want to be titillated. I want the, like going to a horror movie. They just want to be scared. Well, we're not here to scare anybody. We're here to educate. Right, Kev?
It really is. And, being a YouTube kind of channel myself, and I see it all the time, it would be easy for me just to post the actual Mandela effects that people are actually experiencing. And I know for a fact, Tony, I'd probably get 10 times the traffic by doing that. But where does that leave people? It offers not even one hint of an explanation as to what may or may not be going on. And that's why it blows me away. The other night when we came up with that Overhauser alone, it's all to do with the predictions and modelings and probabilities of things. This is like I'm trying to express and convey to the audience out there. This is the detail, the level that you're going to.
Yeah, and I hope people appreciate it. And, even more detail is provided in our magazine, that Kev and I put together, which is the Entangled magazine, and that's available at anthonypatch.com. And that's a way to support our research, is by subscribing to Entangled. And that's where we have the opportunity to go and lay out on paper the real details of what we, even on the air, can't really get into, because you have to see it. You have to have the graphics in order to understand what we're talking about, especially when we're talking about geometry, as we're going to get into tonight. And we also have a conference that's coming up on September 16th and 17th. It'll be a live stream conference, and we hope that registration will open on Monday. We've had to move to another server and to another live streaming service because the one that we had initially started with doesn't have the capabilities, the professional capabilities that we're really trying to bring to the table for this conference. And we'll talk about it later in the show, but we have a list of outstanding researchers that will be presenting on Saturday, and then myself and author Kathleen Urquhart will be presenting the spiritual side in the application of The Art of War by Sun Tzu, and that will be the majority of the will be a conference that is going to rattle some cages. And I'll tell you, in the world of Christian religion, it's going to rattle some cages. And in the world of the secret societies, it is most definitely going to rattle their cages, because we have some very specific information that no one's talking about that we're going to release, but I won't talk about it here. Go ahead, Kev.
Well, Tony, the way I look at it, in these times we're living, if you're going to be talking, you might as well go and rattle somebody's cage, because that's the way, or that's the times we're in right now. People need a wake-up call, and it's almost as if we have to hit them about the face with truth bombs to wake them up, because even when I go into Glasgow, into the city centre right now, I mean, we've all seen it on videos on YouTube and Facebook as well, but the amount of people who are almost held in a trance by their shiny smartphone in their hand, I mean, it really needs some truth bombs to wake them up, Tony, be it the general public or to make these secret societies and security services a little bit uncomfortable that we're going there.
Yeah, and again, it isn't for the purpose of scaring people. What we will be providing at the conference are tangible, realistic steps that they can take to, let's just put it this way, to counter the artificial intelligence movement. So I'm not talking about, guns and pitchforks and torches. I'm talking about individual things people can do. And, I won't give away too much here because, there's always that specter that they're going to shut us down electronically. And so I'm kind of holding my cards close to the vest. What we were getting into, let's get into the specifics here. It's funny, you mentioned, the bearded physicist at CERN holding up the sign Monte Carlo 0 and Bond 1. And, lots of people have broken that down, and we have as well. But focus on the 0 and focus on the 1. That's binary. And that's where we're going, folks. I'm going to give it to you. We got about 10 minutes. I'm going to give you the punchline, as I always do, and we're going to work backwards. Here's the punchline. The Mandela Effect is a cause and effect due to the fact that D wave moved from binary to ternary mathematics. Now that has caused a ripple effect through the matrix.
Now, Anthony, I'm actually going to
easy way to describe it is a ripple effect.
I'm going to voice right now. We can't have Anthony Patch sounding all robotic when he's going into this really important part to do with the Mandela Effect. He sounded like one of Elon Musk's robots from his Tesla company there. But folks, as I'm bringing Anthony back, don't forget it's a huge night of radio right here on TFR Live tonight, because right after the Anthony Patch show, we'll be having Freaky Friday with the Woo Crew. And then if that's not enough for you, straight after that, we've got Beyond the Veil with Chris and Cherie Geo. And then immediately after that, see, it doesn't end there. We have got Brent Thomas with the Paranormal portal. So it's all happening right here on TFRlive.com tonight. Hopefully in a second, I will be rejoined by the man himself. There he is. And
hello, my friend.
Hopefully you're not sounding too much like one of Elon Musk's Tesla robots right now.
No, I'm not AI.
But you were just about to explain here this Mandela effect. It's cause and effect, and then you kind of broke up slightly, and I knew this was an important bit to hammer out there. So if you just want to pick it up there again.
Sure. Let me define ternary, because D-Wave has moved their programming, which is combinatorial optimization. And that essentially means that they're looking at all possible options, using all of them together in combination, and they're looking for the optimal solution by taking in all probable solutions at one time. That's a layman's definition. But moving from binary to ternary.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Another week has passed, and it is that time again for the Anthony Patch Show right here on Truth Frequency Radio. And of course, we've got our new website name now, TFRlive.com. And of course, we've got so many different ways to listen to the show. If you're out there on iHeartRadio, maybe TalkStream Live, TuneIn Radio app, whatever way you're listening to the show, it means so much to myself and, of course, to Anthony Patch, who's here with me, Kev Baker, tonight. And, of course, you come here every week, week after week. And as I keep on saying, that means so much to us. And it's because Anthony Patch, right now, out of all the kind of radio hosts who are drilling down into the topics of technology, 5G, quantum computers, I think right here you are getting, as we've kind of dubbed it, the tip of the spear information. This guy's keeping us all ahead of the curve, and that's why every week we see the numbers growing. So without too much wasting of time from me, let's get to the man himself. And of course, you can find his work over at anthonypatch.com. It's been a pleasure working with him, alongside him, even more closely in recent months. And here he is. Anthony, how you doing, man?
Very good. Thank you, my friend. It's always great to be together Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We do 6 hours a week, and I really want to back up what you said about our audience. The only reason we're here is our audience. And I thank you all for your loyalty, your support, your membership in TFR. And really, we see the consistency in the numbers. We have a pretty good handle on the demographics. We understand that we have a very educated audience, very technically up to speed. They're at the tip of the spear as well as you and I are, Kev. And so we're going to add to that. We're going to get very detailed and very technical this evening. We're going to talk again about a very common discussed topic, and that's the Mandela Effect. But as we've been drilling down over the last couple of weeks on this, and I hope people are not getting tired of hearing, oh no, the Mandela Effect again. But I really feel that it is our mission to get down to the real nub of the issue, or if you want to call it a node, pardon the pun. But we're going to get down into the real technical, mathematical, and geometric definition of why this Mandela Effect has been manifesting in our reality. Go ahead.
And you really have done a great job at uncovering the information, the science behind what is commonly dubbed the Mandela Effect. And as we have gone deeper and deeper into this, yes, it does get detailed, but there's nothing simple about what is going on here. And as we're going to get into tonight, it's almost now this Mandela Effect, it's a symptom